Welcome back everyone to Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube. In this video, I'm going to go over 5 factors that could play a crucial role in the NBA restart and the eventual crowning of an NBA champion this October. So I'm going to go over 5 factors here as we'll take a look at factor number 1 on the list. Factor number 1, players sitting out during the restart. So players have already announced that they will not be joining their team for the NBA restart in Orlando. The players who won't be in Disney World had an impact in some capacity on their team during the course of this season. And it's going to be tough here to replace some of these players who'll be missing the restart, as the rosters to some of these teams have already become thinner. The Brooklyn Nets are already depleted as they will be without their leading rebounder, DeAndre Jordan, who announced that he will not be playing in the NBA restart. Jordan is one of 4 players for the Nets so far that will not be in attendance for the restart, along with the 2 Nets superstars, Kyrie Irving due to a shoulder injury, and Kevin Durant still recovering from his torn Achilles back in the 2019 NBA Finals. Wilson Chandler will also not be joining the Nets for the restart, and Spencer Dinwiddie, who's averaging just under 21 points per game, leads the Nets in assists per game this season, the number 2 scorer behind Brooklyn for this season. Dinwiddie stated on Twitter that he will make a decision at a later date on whether he will join the Nets in the restart, as Dinwiddie has been experiencing symptoms with a virus. And this would be a massive loss here if Spencer Dinwiddie does decide to not join Brooklyn for the restart in Disney World. The Dallas Mavericks bench, it is also gunning thinner here in the offseason, with announcement of Courtney Lee and Willie Cauley-Stein, with both of these players will not join Dallas in the restart. The Portland Trail Blazers also suffering a major loss when their starter, Trevor Ariza, announced that he will not be playing in the restart due to family reasons. Ariza is a crucial part of the Blazers' rotation, and he leads the team with steals per game this season. Davis Bertans of the Washington Wizards also decided not to play in the restart, since Bertans has 2 past injuries to his ACL. Bertans happened to be a key piece to Washington's bench scoring, as he averaged 15.4 points per game this season, which ranked number 2 on the team to Bradley Beal. Bertans did this while shooting the ball at 42.4% from behind the three-point line and making 200 three-point shots this season, which ranks number 7 right now so far in the NBA. And Avery Bradley is also sitting out for the Los Angeles Lakers. Massive loss here for the Lakers defensively, as Bradley is a solid contributor as well offensively when called upon for the Lakers. The Lakers, however, did add in some veteran help with the signing of J.R. Smith, but J.R. Smith hasn't played an NBA game since November 2018. Now we'll take a look here. Factor number 2 I got on the list happens to be no fans and no crowd noise. So this is something that we're going to have to get used to, just like the players, as the players aren't going to be used to playing with no fans and no crowd noise. It'll be totally different when we hear the coach yelling out on the court to his team. The players, I feel like, won't be pumped up here with no fans and no crowd noise like they get pumped up with the cheering and the boos on the court, because they can't use those cheering and boos towards crowd energy as motivation to boost up their team. So it's going to be a different type of basketball, I feel like, with no fans here in the stands, and the players will just have to get used to playing that way, as we'll just have to get used to watching on TV with no crowd noise for now, as this is going to be something that we haven't seen before, unprecedented times. It's going to be interesting for sure. Factor number 3 on the list that will play a role here, possibly into the NBA restart, and it should be a factor here as we crown into an NBA champion in October, happens to be injuries. This one here with a short turnaround after quarantine for these players, as they get back training, they start their drills, and then they get back some of their team chemistry during practice. But some of these players, what could have happened in quarantine is they may have gotten out of shape. Like, they might have not had access over to a gym or a hoop to practice upon during quarantine. And the Denver Nuggets, they are currently falling behind right now on progress at getting team reps, and that's because the Denver Nuggets practice facility was closed this past Saturday due to players testing positive. The Brooklyn Nets also missed out on some training time since they had 2 positive cases and had to close their practice facility back in late June. Injuries, this could have a major factor here in which teams are able to go further in the playoffs, and those teams could possibly be the ones that avoid the injury bug, and the teams that might get bounced early from the playoffs might be the teams that suffer significant injuries during the restart. Now we'll take a look here, number 4, as far as a factor here into the NBA restart and crowning an eventual champion. This one could be the mental health with trying to adapt to the Disney bubble here, as I got as a factor. Mentally being situated in that Disney bubble for players, I feel like that could take a toll here mentally on some of the athletes, as the players won't be able to see their family members in person. They also won't be able to see their wives, their children, and their parents. And what if some of these players choose to sacrifice basketball over family here to play basketball, but then they're at Disney and they find out that some of their family members back home tested positive and are sick? Would that player most likely leave the facility and withdraw for the rest of the season? That could be a factor as well here if their family members back home do take sick and they have to go back and take care of their family members. And also, some of these players might still play in Disney, even if their family members do come down with cases of the virus. And if they do play in Disney, even though they might be, of course, they're going to be concerned about their parents back at home, but some of their parents back at home might have underlying health conditions, or maybe they live in a hot spot here that the player won't be able to visit over 3 months if the player of that team does happen to make the NBA Finals. So that's another thing here. And also, another thing here would be that the players are stuck in Disney. They can't go out. They can't see the real world. And this is just like Big Brother house style living here for these players living in this Disney bubble. So this could very well take a toll mentally on some of his players here during the NBA restart and once we get through and into the NBA playoffs. And the last factor I have here on the list at number 5. Number 5 is the big one here, the main factor for concern. Players testing positive. And of course, with cases on the rise in Florida, the players, they should feel safe and protected inside the Disney bubble, since the NBA is playing at Disney where it's not open at all to the general public. They should feel protective. But NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, he did state if a player were to leave the Disney Wild World of Sports facility, they would need to test and quarantine in order to return to play. The virus has to come from somewhere. What would happen here if hotel workers where the teams are staying at spread the virus to other players? That's basically like the main thing I can think about here on how players could get the virus here inside the Disney bubble when they're not seeing other people coming into the facility. Besides that, it's just the media crews that's there for the games, for the TV crews, the local radio that's putting it on for the media for that team, for the radio network, and also the officials coming in. That's basically it as far as people that's allowed into the arena facilities here in Disney World. But the only other way that I can think about it would be, what if a hotel worker here tests positive and then that spreads to the players, and then those players start testing positive. So some of the stuff here that I was thinking about players testing positive here, number one is if a player does test positive, it can have a significant impact on a team's performance during the restart. All depends, though, on which player tests positive, because once that player tests positive, that certain player has to be isolated for a period of 14 days and then retested to make sure that there isn't a false positive. So what if a superstar player here tests positive? What if LeBron tests positive? What if Giannis tests positive? What if Luka Doncic tests positive? Like, if multiple players here, like all-star players, test positive, the best players in the NBA, then this will significantly alter the playoff path depending on when they happen to test positive. I'll use LeBron here as an example. So, say if LeBron tests positive during the semifinals or finals of the playoffs, do we put an asterisk here next to the 2020 NBA champ, since LeBron couldn't play because he tested positive and most likely showed no symptoms? This would just be a complete mess if we ever got to that. Hopefully it doesn't here. And another thing I have is, what if one team has a bunch of positive cases and all the other teams barely have any cases or no cases? Does the one team with a bunch of positive cases have to forfeit their shot at competing for the 2020 NBA title since they can't compete? That would be so unfair if that happens. If a team just got a bunch of cases on their team and then other teams barely had any and weren't really impacted by the cases. So this season's NBA champion here, in my opinion, it's most likely going to come down to next man up mentality here while trying to avoid an invisible virus, which you really can't do anyway with close contact basketball. This season's champion, I feel like it's going to come down to the team that has the deepest bench, and if players keep on testing positive, which team will have the advantage and avoid players testing positive. And I feel like the team that's going to have the advantage in Disney will be the team that is least impacted by the virus. So there's just so much here to take in, so many things as we go into the NBA restart that are uncertain at this point. And when we get to the NBA restart, we're just going to have to take it day by day here as far as players. And hopefully there's not going to be many players here test positive, and hopefully there can be 0 players once this restart happens, because they'll be all inside the Disney bubble. But I'm going to end it here with a quote by Giannis here that I feel like it basically sums it up perfectly here with crowning this season's NBA champion. So this is a quote by Giannis. Quote, "I feel like a lot of people say that there's going to be a star next to this championship. I feel like at the end of the day, this is going to be the toughest championship you could ever win, because the circumstances are really, really tough right now. So whoever wants it more is going to be able to go out there and take it." That's a quote there by Giannis from the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's a wrap here to this video. 5 factors that could play a role in the NBA restart and crowning an NBA champion, which I went over. Number 1, players sitting out during the restart. Number 2, no fans and no crowd noise. Number 3 happens to be injuries. Number 4, the mental health with trying to adapt to the Disney bubble for these players. And number 5 happens to be players testing positive. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Also, check out all the other great content that my channel has to offer, as well as this is Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube.